Hello, welcome to Froch on Fighting. My name is Carl Froch, aka The Cobra, former unified super middleweight world boxing champion and International Boxing Hall of Famer. Today, I am delighted to be joined with my old boxing pal and colleague, Paulie Malignaggi, former world champion Paulie Malignaggi, should I say, and he's fighting again in the bare knuckle, which we'll get into in a minute. This episode is brought to you by Cobra Casino. Paulie, how are you, my friend?
I'm well, champ. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold, more of a man flu. I was making a big deal of it, but I like to be pampered when I'm at home, feeling a bit rough. But I'm at the back end of it now, so it's all good. Well, I just mentioned it there really quick, and I might as well go straight in with it because you're back in the ring this Saturday.
Yeah.
In a bare knuckle capacity.
Yeah.
Can you tell
Yeah,
me what's going on, please?
Yeah, we call it a ring, but no, it's actually called the trigon. It's actually, if you look at the measurements of a trigon, it's actually the way it's shaped. It's a ring in half, but diagonally. If you cut the ring in half diagonally, that's what the trigon is. And that's what we fight in at BKB. BKB is a company that I've been working with for many years as a commentator and a pundit and analyst. And when I was considering fighting again, and it's really several things, champ. Sometimes people will see an older fighter coming back and they say, "Oh, he must need money." You know what? It's money. Some of it is one last grasp at trying to accomplish something. And I felt like in the bare knuckle arena, it would be more of a chance to grasp something great, something internationally recognized like a world championship. I don't think in boxing it would be as easy. In boxing, you have possibly your misfits route that I could go, and sure, that might be something to consider eventually. But I felt like in the bare knuckle arena, there's a chance to grab something that internationally recognized, and that would be a world championship, something that I don't think I could do in boxing anymore. And so that was the main reason I chose BKB. And the reason specifically BKB, the company, is because I've been with them for so long as a pundit and analyst.
That's fair enough. Am I right in thinking you've already boxed a bare knuckle fight back in
I have.
2019?
I did. I fought in BKFC in 2019. I had a broken hand. I felt like I won the fight, but it was my first experience in bare knuckle. I didn't get the decision. I thought I won rather easily, even fighting one-handed. But I thought, they botched the decision on that one. But either way, it was closer than it could have been because I wound up fighting most of the fight with one hand. This fight, obviously, there's some things we've worked on to adjust that kind of thing. Mainly, the issue is closing your hand correctly. Sometimes in a boxing glove, how to get champ. Sometimes in a boxing glove, we get a little bit lazy with the way we close our hands. That's been one of the main focus points for the training camp, has been properly closing my hand.
Yeah. Do you actually wrap your hands up then in BK, or is it actually what it says on the tin? Is it bare knuckle? Can you not?
Yeah, it is bare knuckle. They do wrap your hands, but the wrap has to stop 1 inch behind the knuckle. So there's the knuckle is actually bare. You're connecting, you're landing bare knuckle. The whatever tape is on your hand, whatever wrap is on your hand, has to be at least 1 inch behind the knuckle area.
And the wrap keeps your hand together, obviously, and stops it from.
Yeah. I mean, you would hope so, right? You would hope so. But there's a couple of different things, different elements to it. There is some dirty boxing allowed, the little smash and grab, a little grabbing and hitting. That's a lot on the inside as well. And of course, like I said, it's a trigon. It's not a ring. So the trigon, if I can describe it aptly and correctly, it's the smallest surface in combat sports. It's the highest percentage of knockouts in combat sports, and it's also, if I can basically describe it simply in layman's terms, it's basically if I take the ring on a diagonal and go corner to corner from a diagonal and cut it in half, and that's basically the shape of a trigon.
And what's the idea behind that? Is that just to make it different to a boxing ring, or is that?
Well, it is to make a difference for a boxing ring, but it's also less escape routes. Force more fighting. Where there is 3 corners now instead of 4, right? And so if it's a trigon, the 3 corners are 60 degrees instead of 90 degrees. So if you're in a corner, there is less room to maneuver. Also, less space forces more action. The minutes are 3 minutes, just like in boxing. It's 5 3-minute rounds. And, I felt like at this stage of my life, there is a chance to accomplish something like this. While in boxing, doing 12 rounds and 10 rounds is a little bit heavy at this age. I still think I can fight. I still think I have the reflexes. I still think, based on the training that I did, I can maneuver and do well. But 10, 12 rounds is difficult at this age. So I felt like the 5-round sprint method that we sort of had in the amateurs may come into play better here in doing bare knuckle.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe that'll help you. I mean, obviously, the older you get, the less engine you've got for the long haul. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been looking at maybe looking at fighting again myself. I mean, and I asked you earlier why are you doing it. Well, you kind of answered why you're doing it. You're obviously getting paid. You want to get paid. You don't want to do it for free. Get punched in the
Mhm.
face. But have you still got that bit of an itch? Have you? Do you still feel like I said, you can't get back into professional boxing because you retired years ago because you couldn't do it anymore? Same as me. I retired at 37 years old because one, the desire was gone, and two, at top level, professional boxing over 12 3-minute rounds at
Yeah.
world class. You've got
Yeah.
to be. It's a young man's sport,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
For the most part, if you rule out Bernard Hopkins and some of the heavyweights that go on for years, it's a young man's game. But with the BKB or with fighting somebody from UFC like Darren Till and me, for example,
Mhm.
they're not actually that skillful of boxers. They can still fight; it gets rough in there. But
Mhm.
do you actually want to achieve something? Do you? It's not just for the old Bunsen
Well,
burner.
well,
You actually
well,
want to
that's
achieve.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting into, champ. You know, the thing is with bare knuckle, I feel like there's an achievement possible. I feel like there's a world championship possible. You know, BKB possible. You know, obviously, I don't want to overlook my opponent this weekend, Tyler Goodjohn. He's been a champion actually in BKB in the past. So, as an ex champion, you know, if I'm able to beat an ex champion like that, then I can position myself maybe for a possible title shot. You know, so first and foremost, I think putting myself in a position to accomplish something I think having something to strive for besides money gives you that edge in that tiger in your eye, you know, that you can achieve a championship. But you know, I don't put glove boxing out of the question. You know, 12 3-minute rounds. Obviously, I don't think I can do it. You know, but yeah, you mentioned Darren Till, who does Misfits. You know, I've had some conversations with the Misfits people as well. I've had some people, and you know, there's possible interest in doing that kind of glove boxing where it's you know it's sort of in a controlled atmosphere where guys like us can get in there and maneuver and draw interest and have some fun matchups as well. But as far as accomplishing something great, as far as accomplishing something with a feather in my hat, uh, and another championship at that level, I think I can only do that in bare knuckle, and that's why I'm doing the BKB fights.
Fair enough. That sounds fair enough. I mean, if you still want to fight, still feel like physically fit enough, and you feel like you want to actually get in there and have a little bit of a tear up, because I'm on the fence at the minute. I'm not sure what I want to. What do you reckon? Me and Darren Till. What do you reckon?
I think I don't mind that fight, Carl. You know, it's all in what you have left, though, Carl. You know, it's all in your mentality. I think with that, it's a mentality thing. You know,
Yeah.
do you have that tiger in your eye? Do you have that mean streak? Do you have that ferocity that you had? Because Carl, you were one of those guys that was known for that tenacity and that ferocity.
Yeah.
Aside from your obviously craftiness in the ring, you
Did.
know. And I think you know in a fight with Darren Till, I think you know that you would need to have that ferocity and bring that same kind of ferocity to the table. And I think if you still have that inside you, then yeah, I'd say why not? You know, I think it's something that could draw interest. I think people would definitely be interested, especially with Till the way he just knocked out Ferguson. Was it not Ferguson? No, the way he knocked out Rockhold recently.
Rockhold, yeah.
You know, so I think it would definitely generate interest. I mean, you've got a huge name, it would be a big deal. And of course, that's what I'm saying. You know, I think fighters that have had big names, you know, somebody like you, even somebody like me, you know, it will draw interest if we do something else. And I think, you know, that's why there's a big interest in my BKB fight this weekend. And I think if you did a fight with Till, I think it would be massive interest as well. And I think Misfits are doing a good job there as well in bringing these kind of name fighters to the table and sort of cross promoting the MMA and boxers to box one another.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, the desire's got to be there, and at the minute, I mean, I've got no real desire to be fighting again. I would need that because my style was built on fitness and the
Yeah.
will to win, the refusal to quit. So for me to get in,
and,
I'd have
and
to be
and also
clear.
breaking the other guy's will. You know, you were a guy
Yeah,
that you know
exactly.
broke a lot of your opponents. You know, I can remember the Lucian Boutte fight and even the Jermaine Taylor fight. You know, where
Mm.
the guys were possibly more skilled, but you literally broke them. You know, you mentally broke those guys. You know, and then physically broke them, of course. But yeah, that's why I tell you, that's something a question you have to ask yourself if you do
Exactly, yeah.
it. Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself.
I tell you what, someone else who's into bare knuckle is Conor McGregor, and I think they're the complete opposite. I think they're like competitors of what you're doing, the actual
Yeah.
same
Yeah,
industry,
he's
but
out. He's out
competitor.
at BKFC. I did fight for them
Yeah,
6 years ago. Their canvas is a bit bigger, and they fight 2-minute rounds instead of three. You know, so
right,
it's a
okay.
bit different of a promotion. But yeah, he's out there as well. Connor likes to tease a lot of fights, but I don't think Connor will be fighting. I don't see it happening. I
No.
think Connor is more of a wrestling caricature, WWE style, than he is actually a real fighter.
You've got a bit of history with Conor McGregor. Is that someone you'd like to fight?
I mean, I got history with him, Carl, but he's not going to do anything. I mean, he's going to just tease fights. I mean, he's been a punching bag since we sparred. I mean, if we really honestly, if we look at the guy's career, I give him credit. I do give the guy credit. I'll give you credit. I'll give him credit for this reason. He's the only guy that can constantly get his ass kicked and then give it a rest and then come back and talk as if he's been winning and convince the crowd, convince the public like he's a winner and generate interest in the next fight. He has been getting his ass kicked for about a decade straight. If you look at the resume, there's been about a decade straight of ass kickings that he's just caught from everybody, you know, and he's been basically a piñata. But he gives it enough rest. He'll get into a fight in a nightclub and beat somebody up, or he'll knock out a mascot in a Miami Heat game or something and beat somebody up, or he'll hit an old man in a pub and sort of generate the interest away from the fact that he's just been getting his ass kicked. And then all of a sudden, there's interest in another fight, and he's somehow managed to do it again with his talk of fighting at the White House recently. I find it, I got to be honest, I find it quite amazing that he's able to pull that off. I mean, that it's either the real stupidity of a generation that we live in, or the man's a genius, one or the other, or it could be both, you know. But certainly, there's a little bit of idiocracy in the generation we live in, because I don't think any generation could be fooled into constantly watching a perennial loser every year, but this generation does, and they're very interested in it.
They're all watching Jake Paul as well and thinking he knows how to fight.
At least Jake is, you know, fighting guys that he's going to beat. You know, he sets it up. Conor tries to set up guys he's going to beat, and then they all beat his ass, you know, constantly. So, I don't know. He's got to really shake the bottom of the barrel for this one if he's able to do it again, but we'll see.
And Conor McGregor's just been absolutely beat again. He's been roasted by the Malignaggi machine. You just absolutely writ him off, Paulie, there. But,
you know, nobody beat me. Nobody ever beat me at trash talking, Carl. You know that, man.
No, you're a serious roaster. That's why I always stay on the good side of you, Paulie. But
Kev, you were always someone I respected, man. It was always
different
watching you fight.
Weight divisions. We had some fun broadcasting together on Sky and on different networks. I think did we do a little bit on DAZN as well? I think we did.
Yeah, we did some stuff. We've done some stuff together in the past. I also fought on your undercard when you beat Jermaine, which is a crazy fight. You know,
was you on that card? When
I was on card. It was my return after Ricky Hatton, so I fought on the deeper undercard. Yeah, it was. I was deeper on the undercard because it was my first return after Ricky Hatton, so it was sort of a dust-off fight. They got me.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, that was that. I came out. After my shower and watched your fight, you know, I got in the dressing room, I showered. I remember I missed the co-main event because it ended quickly. Alan Green knocked out Carlos De Leon, and then I came out and your fight was just starting. And what a classic fight! What a classic ending that fight!
Great fight to watch live.
Oh my God! I mean, heart-stopping stuff. That's what I'm saying about you, Carl. If you're gonna do it again, you had that tenacity, so you got to really make sure that you can bring that out of you, because that's something that was very particular to you, that, you know, really made you unique in that way, that kind of characters having a backbone and really being able to overcome those kind of things, you know?
And most of the time, you can only back that up really when you're fit and strong, and you've got that desire. You need to be working hard in the gym, because you need that fitness to drive you through them rounds and championship. I mean, I did Jermaine Taylor in the dying seconds of the last round when everyone thought the fight was over.
Yeah, crazy fight. That was like Duran and Lamar and Laurent Dotil. You know, people talk about those classic wins by the old timers. You know, Lamar was hopelessly behind Laurent Dotil and knocked him out in the last round. That was the modern day. That was the modern day version of it. It was really something.
I don't mind being compared to that. That was a classic. Well, listen, good luck with your bare knuckle boxing. I really do wish you all the best. Hope you enjoy yourself and hope you get the victory, which I'm sure you will, because you've got the skills, man. You've got the movement, the fast feet, the head move, the light work, fast hands, combination punches when you can be bothered, or you just like a little up-close tail, because it can get a bit rough in BKB, and they do hold the back of your head, hit and hold, and get a bit scrappy inside.
I'm working on some of that stuff, Carl. Maybe I'll
like all that, though, don't you?
Yeah, maybe I'll be able to use it. I'll see how it comes out in the fight, you know?
There it goes. But no, massive luck with that. I just want to ask you a couple of questions while I've got you, because you've never been a man to mix your words, or mince your words, as they say. So I just want to ask you, Jake Paul, Gervonta Davis. I know you've seen, you've been hammering Davis lately for that.
I don't think people are talking about this enough. The fact that it's not a real fight, it's an exhibition. And people always talk about Jake setting up his fights. I personally don't think Jake sets up his fights. I think, you know, they're sanctioned fights, and, you know, you're risking a federal crime if you set up a sanctioned fight. So I personally don't think, when I watch it, I don't. I just think he's fighting opponents that, you know, are not with it anymore, or are too small for him and whatnot. But in this situation, it is an exhibition. So you've got to keep in mind that this could be set up. This could be like WWE. this one could be set up. I don't know. I'm not saying it is, but
Yeah,
this is not a sanctioned
that's
fight,
interesting
champ.
because it's actually
This is an
I know what
exhibition.
you're saying.
And an exhibition means you cannot bet on it. You cannot bet on the result. If you remember, this is why they changed the Mike Tyson fight from an exhibition to a real fight, because they realized, an exhibition, you could stage it and they couldn't take bets on it. So this is an exhibition. There is no betting on it. So that means, I'm not saying people are going crazy with the opinions who's going to win, who's going to lose. You don't know what size gloves they're going to wear. You don't even know if they're going to stage the whole thing, because this is something that, as an exhibition, it's not illegal to stage it. So I think this could be all kinds of crazy, wacky stuff. This is a bit of a circus, in my opinion.
Who would you think should win that fight? Would you think that Davis should be able to get in there, even though the size did 100 pounds? Do you think he should be able to do it?
If they don't stage it and don't kind of set up a sort of a mild sparring session, I'd say Davis has a chance. Depends on the size of the gloves. Because here's the thing: Jake is probably 100 pounds bigger than the guy. That's a lot of weight, Carl. You've been in a boxing ring. That still counts. And if you make the gloves small, Gervonta could technically hurt Jake even if he hits him. But the problem is the gloves are small. Jake could also hurt Gervonta because Gervonta's so small. Gervonta's so much smaller than him. So do you make the gloves big, and then really who's got an advantage? I don't know. Technically Gervonta's a lot better boxer, but he's so much smaller. I've stood next to Jake. Jake's a big guy. It's like I said, it's a bit of a circus freak show, and that's why I don't put it out of the question that this exhibition could be a bit staged in the ring.
That's fair enough. That's a fair point. That is, and actually,
people aren't talking about that enough. I feel like people aren't talking about that enough.
Well, he's threatening to sue everybody who talks about it and anyone who talks about it.
Well, that's because his fights have been sanctioned, and I personally don't think he has set up the other fights. I personally think, like Mike Tyson, he had no legs left. You know what I mean? I to tell you the truth, I thought that was an easy one to bet and call. It was that Jake would beat Mike Tyson, and even some of these other fights, they're smaller. Jake doesn't set up his fights. I think what he does is he stacks the deck against his opponents in those fights. So I wouldn't call them staged, but they're deck stackers. So he has an advantage. In this situation, though, an exhibition can be staged. I'm not saying anything that's out of the question. You're allowed to stage an exhibition. It's WWE is essentially exhibitions. So this is not a sanctioned fight. This is different from all the ones he's done before.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but he's been involved in a couple of fights. If I just take the Chavez Jr. fight, a lot of people accused Chavez Jr. of not throwing a punch for 6-7 rounds.
Sucks, Carl. Chavez sucks. Chavez is so bad. Chavez sucks, though, Carl. He's horrible. I mean, Chavez. I
was going to fight him at the end of my career, Chavez.
Yeah, you should have, Carl. Honestly, he sucks. He's terrible. If you really be honest, Chavez probably shouldn't have been anywhere near within a sniff of a world championship. But he robbed about 5 or 6 guys on the way up. Before, as a prospect, he was robbing guys. Then he got to high level and he robbed some other guys like Brian Vera and some other fighters. But Chavez is horrible. Chavez is
fair enough. Well, listen, his dad Chavez Sr. was an absolute legend. So we'll leave the name Chavez. Julio Cesar Chavez.
We'll leave the senior and junior separately. Yeah,
we'll leave it with that. But the Jake Paul chat is a nice caveat into my next question for you. Who is the biggest knobhead in boxing?
Oh, the biggest knobhead in boxing. Oh, let's see. The biggest knobhead in boxing. I'll be honest, man. I don't know, man. You may think. Yeah, a lot of people want to say Jake, but I don't really consider Jake as in boxing. Jake is almost in a separate. Jake is almost like in a separate lane.
From the boxing world.
Yeah, Jake is almost in a separate lane. I mean, as far as a knobhead in boxing right now, I personally don't like the way Gervonta Davis has taken advantage of the lightweight division. In a weight class full of so many destroyers, Gervonta Davis has managed to not be in a single 50-50 fight his entire career. That is quite an accomplishment, considering that they have him on pound-for-pound lists and have him as this star fighter. The fact that he's never been in a 50-50 fight his whole career is an accomplishment in the way that you don't want to have an accomplishment.
Why would you say he wasn't in a 50-50 fight with Ryan Garcia? Because Garcia came down in weight?
Brian Garcia wasn't a 50-50 fighter. Brian Garcia's never been champion and never been world champion. We're talking about a guy who's a champion, world championship level, 2-weight class world champion, a guy who's had Lomachenko in his weight class, a guy who's had Shakur Stevenson in his weight class, a guy who's had Kevin Farmer in his weight class when he was on 130, a guy, the guys have been swirling around, a guy who still has tough lightweights in his weight class right now and still manages to find 15 and 20 to 1 underdogs to defend titles against instead of fighting against the guys that would make 50-50 fights. They exist. Yet he's always making pay-per-views against 15 and 20-1 underdogs. You don't see that. It's a constant thing. And so I think that's a sort of a knobhead thing to do if we're on that subject.
He gets away with it, doesn't he, because of his name?
Gets away with it, but they built that name that way. So, in today's day and age, you can make anything into a star, I suppose.
Yeah, true. No, it's interesting that you don't think Gervonta Davis has really fought anybody. I know what you're saying, and he does drain people down a little bit, pulls them down in weight, but he had a draw last time out. Do you think his desire's gone for the game?
I thought he lost that. I thought he lost that fight. He pulled Ryan Garcia down in weight, but he also fights 130 pounders that instead of makes them come up to 135. Like he fought Hector Garcia for 130. He just did it to Lamont Roach actually, and Lamont beat him. Lamont was a 130 pound champion who he tried to get up to 135 and thought it would be an easy defense. That's why he was a 16-1 underdog going into the Gervonta Davis fight. But then Lamont surprised him, and what does he do? Instead of doing the rematch, he does the Jake Paul exhibition.
Yeah, it's a shame when you look at, because he's an exciting fighter, Gervonta Davis. And I do like his fighting style, and he's got big following, and people talk highly of him. But when you break it down and look at what he's been doing, I can't disagree with what you're saying, to be honest.
Yeah, top fighters should fight one another. This is the only way the sport survives.
Absolutely. What's your least favorite thing about boxing?
Probably that. It's probably the manufactured stars, the manufacturing of stars and the fact that the modern fan base today, instead of demanding top fights, will defend their favorite fighter tooth and nail for fighting cab drivers because they don't want to see top fights anymore. They just want to see their favorite fighter win so they can go to sleep happy when they go to sleep at night because it's almost like this glorifying of other human beings to the point where it makes and breaks your day and night if your favorite fighter doesn't win or lose, So they'd rather see their favorite fighter. They're happy seeing their favorite fighters fighting inept opponents as opposed to making super fights. Boxing generations of the past demanded super fights. We had fighters that would be built up and then they all fought one another. Carl, your career stands for itself. You fought a lot of top guys. And people got excited for those fights. Now we see fighters being brought in parallel lanes in the same weight class. Then you eventually feel like they're going to fight each other, and they never do. They just continue to fight and go on these parallel lanes and never cross one another. So you just create these quote unquote top fighters, but they never fight one another. So you never really know what the top fighter is. And the fan bases, it only happens because the fan bases support this garbage, and this is why Canelo Alvarez was outclassed by Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford may have been a smaller guy, but Canelo Alvarez had not been world class for years. It was just, he was fighting inept subpar opposition for years. So it looked like he was, at the top because he was keeping those titles hostage. But then a welterweight came up 3 weight classes and beat him rather easily because that welterweight was still world class. Canelo had not been world class for years already. But he gave you the illusion that he was still world class. The fact that we let these fighters do this, is one of the things that really turns me off about boxing because I feel like top fighters should fight one another. We all know who the top fighters are. They know who the top fighters are. Fights can happen.
Yeah, Canelo beat a couple of British super middleweights and then went up to light heavyweight. Class, didn't he? He didn't meet the Cobra at super middleweight. What do you reckon if he'd have fought me at super middleweight in my prime, like when you see me render Jermaine Taylor?
Canelo wouldn't have fought you, Carl. He would have avoided you, man. Come on, yeah. Canelo likes to avoid guys like that. Or what he'd have done. I tell you what Canelo likes to do. He'd have waited for your best years to pass you by, and then he'd have fought you. You'd have maybe waited to see if you sort of started to slow down or got a little older and said, okay, now I'll fight Carl. He wouldn't have fought you at your best. That's for damn sure. Because he doesn't like to fight guys at their best.
He jumped in there with Triple G, didn't he? Was it 2 or 3
at
times?
35 years old though. Triple G was 35, and then after robbing him 2 times,
argument.
and then after robbing him 2 times, he waited till the guy was 40 to give him a third fight. So
yeah. Did you think he lost any of them fights, Triple G? Do you think he actually won any?
I thought Golovkin won the first 2 fights. Honestly, I thought he won
first
both
2. Yeah.
I thought he won both the first 2 fights. But being that Canelo got away with them, he waited until the guy turned 40 years old to give him the third fight.
Right, that's enough negativity about boxing and roasting some top fighters, but you can always pick holes and flaws in careers. What's your favorite thing? What's your favorite thing about boxing?
My favorite thing about boxing is that no matter where it is, it somehow still keeps going. I don't know. We still keep it going, and for that, I'm thankful because I know it's the way out for a lot of people, and so we need this way out because today, in tough economic times today, there's still a lot of people trying to fight their way out of poverty and try to fight their way out of misery. It was that for me when I was a teenager, and it did the job for me, and so I'm glad it's still around because I mean, it continues to give people options. It continues to give people a safety haven. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, there's negativity about it. Yes, it can be a very dirty business. But my favorite thing about boxing is that hopefully it remains this way. What I'm about to say, that it's not like the UFC, that it has the Ali Act, and I hope it stays with the Ali Act because I don't want it to become that league format like the UFC.
And that's what potentially Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh getting together were trying to do with this boxing league. So do you think that's not going to get any sort of momentum?
I mean, it may. I hope it doesn't. It may, because a league like that, and Dana White's resume speaks for itself. He doesn't pay well. His company does make money, but it all goes to the corporate entities at the top. The fighters get very little piece of what they're actually generating. As opposed to boxing, if you get to that level of stardom, you will get a major piece of what you're generating. So him trying to change over the business model is something I hope never to see in boxing. It's something that is in MMA, and I hope boxing is able to fight it off.
Yeah, Eddie Hearn was critical of Dana White's business model, wasn't he? And saying that the fighters own the show and they take 80% of the purse. But then, how much do the undercard get paid if the top of the bill gets paid so much? I suppose there's that argument, and at least the best of the best fight each other. Like early on, you talked about parallel lanes with the best fighter in this weight division, and then there's somebody else in the same weight division, but in a different body. They don't meet each other.
But Carl, do they fight each other? Because there's different leagues, and so the best fighter from one league is not allowed to fight the best fighter from the other league. That's like saying the champion of the WBC can never fight the champion in the IBF. In boxing, sometimes it doesn't happen, but we are able to see those unification fights. So in MMA, does it happen, or is the fan base so stupid? The fan base that stupid that they think they're seeing all the fights when they're actually not seeing all the fights. Because just because you're seeing all the fights within one league doesn't mean you're seeing all the fights within one sport. Because let's face it, the champion of PFL can never unify against the champion of the UFC or the champion of ONE FC. And just because MMA fans are that stupid that they don't demand those fights doesn't mean that you're seeing the best fighter in the world at one weight class. I want to find out the best fighter in the world is at one weight class. So in boxing, what do we demand? We demand unification fights. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. But we have multiple champions and unification fights can happen. In MMA, you never see that. The champion of the PFL or the ONE and UFC can never fight one another because they're in separate leagues. But MMA fans, just because MMA fans are so stupid that they don't see that they should be demanding this stuff, doesn't mean that they're making all the fights. They're not making all the fights. They're making all the fights within one league. That's like saying all the fights get made within the Matchroom banner, all the fights get made within the Top Rank banner. Sure.
So just for clarity on people that don't fully understand UFC, you've got the UFC, which is mixed martial arts, under the UFC, Dana White's organization, and then are you talking about another organization within the UFC?
Yeah, I'm talking about ONE FC. I'm talking about PFL. They have good fighters there too. So and they have champions there too. ONE FC is a big market in Asia.
And it's the same rules.
Same rules, mixed martial arts. It's just there's different leagues because they create leagues in that sport.
That's a strong argument for that league not working then. Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
And nobody talks about it because I always call MMA fans the dumbest fans in sports because the things that they talk about, the things that they don't even see within their own sport is amazing to me. Like for boxing, it's common sense. Listen, one champion is a champion. I want to see him fight the other champion. That's it. You want to see the unification. Yeah. Boxing fans automatically will tune into that and gravitate to that. As soon as the guy wins a title, like, oh, this unification against the other champion in the weight class will be amazing. MMA fans are so stupid. They think they're getting all the fights. No, you're not. You're getting all the fights within the same league. You're not getting all the fights. You're getting all the fights within the same league. Again, that's like all the fighters from Top Rank fighting one another, but then they never fight the fighters from Matchroom or they never fight the fighters from Queensberry.
Yeah, I know. I get that argument. Yeah, that's a strong argument. That's a strong argument. Right. On from UFC and ONE FC in the mixed martial arts world. Back to boxing really quickly. Chris Eubank, Conor Benn, the rematch. Are you excited? What do you think?
You know what? They sold me. I wasn't really sold on the first fight. I thought it was more of a big British showdown, and you know what? It was something more so for the UK because I felt like neither of these guys were really gonna ever become world champion. I said, okay, it doesn't really matter. It's here in the States, it's not going to really matter. But I'll tell you what, they sold me. That fight they fought, as I've seen sons of champions come in, like we mentioned Chavez Jr., we've mentioned some others, that sort of make a mockery of the last name and become boxers just because their parents are fighters, their father was a fighter, and then they just make a mockery of the last name and just, sure, do nothing with their careers. Actually, just make them the last name look bad after what their father, did with their career. And we've seen several guys like this. I mean, there's Chavez Jr., there's There's I think Steve Collins, the son who fights, is not very good. Who just lost against basically a subpar opponent himself, and so on and so forth. There's so many. So when you put it from that perspective and you look at what Eubank and Benn did and the way they fought, you talk about you put it all on the line. You got to have the mentality, put it all on the line. We were talking about that before. They really did put it all on the line. They really fought with their hearts out. They really fought like their last names meant something, and they fought like they had pride in their last names, which I had to respect, and I had to give the respect to that fight. So they sold me on that fight. That fight was terrific, and I'm looking forward to the rematch now.
Yeah, one thing's for sure, it was competitive because it could have been like Chris Eubank Jr. is naturally quite big. He could have maybe outboxed and been too strong for Conor Benn, but Conor Benn stayed in there with the heavier guy. I know there was the rehydration clause and all that, but they agreed to fight at 160 pounds. The fight was made at 160. Conor Benn did really, really well. It was close, and he seemed to hurt Eubank early. So with that in mind, and with Eubank still, I mean, he's older, he's 37, I think he is, and he's had another camp. They've still got the rehydration clause. Do you give Conor Benn a chance in the rematch? Who have you got winning that one?
I think Conor has a chance. The way you would be stupid to think that Conor doesn't have a chance based on the way the first fight went, because the first fight was very competitive. So you could see that either guy could win the fight. So based on that, you would be ignorant to not give Conor Benn a chance in the rematch. I do still favor Eubank. I think he's a bit more crafty. I don't know the exact weight of the rematch, if it's going to be 160 again, because that can come into play as well. Yeah, so that comes into play as well, because Eubank is a big struggle. But I slightly still favor Eubank again, but I think it's going to be close again. I really think it's going to be competitive again. I think these guys may be made for each other, just like the fathers were made for one another, And I think it's going to be another good competitive fight. But I slightly lean towards Eubank. But again, I'd be ignorant to just say that, oh no, Conor definitely can't win the fight. I just like the first fight sold me. Now the second fight has me questioning, who I strongly believe can win the fight. I don't have a strong opinion on who I believe wins the fight.
No, I agree with that. I think the fight was very close, but because Conor Benn had to work, I think he had to work harder than Eubank. Don't get me wrong, Eubank worked hard in the last couple of rounds and really drove it over the line by just non-stop throwing punches. I don't know if he's got that in him again, but Conor did clip him early. I think if he calms it all down and slows it down a little bit instead of rushing everything, he'd have a chance. And I was going to say I don't have a favourite, but I kind of do, and I might let my guard down a little bit here. But I kind of hope Conor Benn clips Eubank on the chin and gives him a little shake early doors and then punishes him a little bit. But Conor Benn's grown on me a little bit of late, and he did work hard, and he stole my heart in that first fight because he went for it, and I could see he was kind of outweighted in there, and it's difficult when I've sparred people who are light heavyweights and cruiserweights. After 4 or 5 rounds, it's hard, that extra weight leaning on you, and he just stayed in there and just put his heart and soul on the line, and I love to see that. And Eubank did as well. Give Eubank his credit. He's a fighter deep down. He's got that Eubank senior mindset and that toughness from his dad. So no, good fight. One I'm looking forward to. I don't think anybody in that weight division at 160, the world champions in that weight division, I don't think they'll be worried about Eubank or Benn. But them two fighting each other makes for a good fight. So we've got to go along with that and look forward to it, I think.
Absolutely.
What was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you about Oleksandr Usyk. What do you reckon to him next? Do you think he's at that time? Should he retire?
I think, who am I to tell another grown man what to do, Camp? But I'll tell you what, I think he's done so great, so well. There's nothing more he can accomplish where they'll make him greater in the history of boxing, right? Whoever wants to say he's better than Ali is going to say it right now. Whoever won't say he's better than Ali, nothing Usyk can do will make a person like that say he's better than Ali. So at this point, you've pretty much reached your ceiling as far as where people are going to rate you. There are people they're going to say that you're the GOAT and you're the greatest of all time, and there are some people that are going to say, no, you don't, nobody compares Muhammad Ali. And wherever the divide is, I don't think anything Usyk accomplishes will change those people's minds, regardless of what side of the aisle they fall on. But by continuing to fight, you risk getting old in one night and you get yourself beat, and then you convince more people that maybe you're not the GOAT. So I think if you're Usyk, you've reached your ceiling as far as where people are going to rate you. And again, I'm nobody to tell a grown man to retire, but I personally, as a fan, would prefer he retires. Yeah, despite the fact that he still looks good.
I think the danger is Usyk staying around for too long and then age time catching up with him. Then he loses because he shouldn't be losing against the time. That's the only thing that's going to beat him. He beat AJ twice quite comfortably. Beat Tyson Fury twice. Look at the size difference, and he's able to do what he wants to do in there. And in that first fight, there's an argument that Tyson Fury could have been stopped. The referee kind of saved him in round 9, didn't he?
It was very
it was a
controversial.
beating. But no,
And
I
even the
agree
way
with
he
you
came back
totally.
against Dubois, even the way he rematched Dubois and just absolutely obliterated him in the
Well, yeah,
rematch,
we
that was
forgot Dubois.
impressive
Done
too.
Dubois twice as well.
Because also Dubois at the moment after the Usyk fight had been on a tear. After the first Usyk fight, Dubois went on a
Absolutely.
tear and had a bunch of stoppages in fights where he was an underdog. So he was coming into the Usyk rematch with some big momentum, and
Confident, yeah.
Usyk absolutely vaporized him.
Vaporized him.
Yeah,
Vapor. I
that
love
big
that. I'm going to
shot.
start using that one as one of my one-liners. I love that. El Sparko, rendered
Yeah.
unconscious,
Well,
ironed out.
you
That's my
guys,
new one.
yeah.
Vaporized.
In the UK, you like to say sparked or ironed out. Yeah, yeah. We over here we use the word vaporized at times.
Yeah, vaporized. That's a good one. I think you
Yeah.
vaporize people on that. My son's playing a game at the minute. He's vaporizing zombies and all sorts. Anyway, mate, let's finish. Let's finish with the great Ricky Hatton, the late great Ricky Hatton. I mean, someone you know very well, having shared the ring with him. Very sad news of his passing. Shook the boxing world up. It really did. He's a couple of years younger than me, at 40, 46, 47 years old. And can you just have a word on Ricky Hatton? Have you got any interesting stories on him?
Yeah, I mean, with Ricky, people have asked me a lot about him lately, obviously with what happened, and I tell it like this, there was about an 18-month period of my life where Ricky was a big part of it. When I won my world championship, my first world title, and there was swirlings and conversations surrounding fight against Ricky Hatton because he was also at 140 pounds and he was the man in the weight class.
Mm.
So for about an 18-month period, we were around each other a lot, and I tell people, at that point in my career, I preferred to dislike every opponent I fought. It was just the way I was. I was young. I was hungry. I was, more of a ferocious mindset. Ricky was very difficult to dislike. I mean, he was a fun guy, a funny guy, endearing personality. You find out later that he was had these struggles internally, and you don't really consider how serious it is until the unthinkable happens. And, if there's one thing I probably regret is that in the years after we fought, we were in touch at times, but not as much, obviously. We were not around one another nearly as much as we were for that 18-month period. I would be in the UK. Times we worked together as pundits. Sometimes I'd see him at a show. Once in a while, I'd, reach out or whatnot, but not very much. Considering the amount of times I came to the UK later in my career, I did not reach out to Ricky a lot and I was just thinking, oh, he's Ricky Hatton. He's famous. He's got so much going on. He doesn't want to hear
He'll
from me.
always be there.
Yeah, he'll always be there, and he doesn't want to hear from me. He's got so much going on in his life. You always think, you know, you get left looking and wondering when something like this happens, and you think to yourself, could maybe a phone call from me have helped? Could I have been more personable? Could I have reached out more? Would that have been helpful? Maybe we think sometimes people may not want to hear from us. I'd rather be disappointed to say you're too busy for me than be disappointed the way I am now to find out what happened to Ricky, because this is like I said, the unthinkable. I'd
Very
rather
sad,
be
isn't it? Very sad
yeah,
Ricky passed
yeah.
at his
I'd
age.
rather be on.
So,
I'd rather be disappointed and reach out to a person and say they say they don't have time for me, rather
yeah,
than
I get that.
not do it, and then later on you find out this happens and you're like, and get left wondering, wow, this person, maybe they were lonely the whole time.
Did
Maybe
you?
me reaching out could have helped out.
Yeah. Did you ever work with him after you'd
Yeah.
boxed him? Was you with him and
Yeah.
was you okay?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
got
we
on
did
with
some
both?
stuff. We did some stuff early on with Boxer. I remember I
Oh,
was
right,
with
okay.
Boxer early on, and and Ricky was there too. I did some pundit work with him there, and then I'd see him at events. I remember when he was getting ready to do the Barrera exhibition. I saw him at an event, and he looked terrific. And I remember in his joking, jolly way, I remember telling him, wow, how great he looked, and he pushed back the clock and all the years, and he said, and he basically gave me a rub, and he goes, what's happened to you on the other hand, like you haven't aged so well, so that was the Ricky Hatton way. He could be either self-deprecating or deprecating to you, but he was always a jokester and a prankster, and someone that could always make you laugh no matter how you felt.
Absolutely. Solid character. He'd be sadly
Yeah,
missed, Ricky won't.
yeah.
Definitely. I mean, but listen, mate, you're fighting this Saturday, so I just want to wish you all the best. Good luck. Hopefully, I
Thank you,
mean,
Sam.
it's all about not getting injured. Let's not get injured. You don't want a broken
Yeah.
nose. You don't want a fractured eye socket or bust hand even. So hopefully
No, no.
you can get through this bare knuckle occasion without getting. You're going to get some superficial wounds. You're going to get.
Hey, you know
You may
what,
get
Carl? It's a
cut.
tear up. If I think about that stuff, then I'm not thinking about it correctly. You know what I'm saying,
Do you still
Carl?
get nervous?
Yeah, you get, you get a little fidgety, but it's with the experience you have as a fighter, you know how to control that better with through the years. But
Bit different with our boxing gloves, though, isn't it?
it is different without boxing gloves, but in some ways it's better, in some ways it's worse. Either way,
Yeah.
I know how to fight, and that's always what I tell myself in the back of my mind. I train, I feel the sharpness in camp, and I know how to fight, and I know what I have here. Like I said, you
Yeah,
gotta know that
absolutely.
you gotta feel that you have that ferocity still here. If that ferocity, you don't think you can summon that ferocity, then you shouldn't be fighting. If you feel like you can summon that ferocity, then okay, you can be there. And I feel like it's still there. I feel like it's in the back of my head.
That's nice to hear. Well, listen, mate, all the best to you on Saturday. I'll be there ringside supporting you. I'll be shouting for you. And I
Champ,
will,
thank you, man. I'm looking forward to seeing
yeah,
you, man.
pleasure. Listen, I'm looking forward to it. You get your head down and get done what you need to do in your final preparations and be at your best on Saturday
Will
night.
do.
But all the very best. Good luck to you. And it's been great talking to you, Paulie. I'll catch up with you Saturday after the fight, hopefully.
Yes, sir, champ. Take it easy. Bye bye.